we are now going to come to the second finalist presentations, and our colleagues from Bayer that would like to introduce you into their CDL Plus approach. And as you know, they are long-standing competence center members, and it's really a great pleasure to have you here and presenting a little bit about your journey on the one hand side, but also your learnings and vision for process automation with your Cinderella approach. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So a warm welcome also from Leverkusen, where we are going to share a few insights and words about process automation with CDL Plus. So I think the first lessons learned is to choose a project title which fits on the corporate slides. So we had to shorten it a little bit. Your presenters today is J&J, but not the company. We are from Bayer AG. So my name is Jens Peter Henriksen. I'm part of the Master Data Management Office as a GPO for Master Data. We have a cross-functional, cross-divisional scope and manage the topics across Bayer. I am with Bayer since 2004 and have been in different governance roles, data governance roles since about 2012. So Dane, living in Germany, and handing over to the other J, Jens.
Thank you very much. My name is Jens Greiner. I'm working together with Jens Peter in the Master Data Management Office since April this year. The years before, I worked in the application support for supply chain applications at Bayer, but I have a long history as an external consultant, worked in many different projects and departments, but always with a focus on master data topics. Thank you.
Thanks, Jens. Before we started to talk about our project, just a few words about Bayer. We're not going to spend too much time here, so let me just get to the next one. So just to give you an overview of our business areas. So most of you probably know brands like aspirin when you visit the pharmacy. So that's coming out of our consumer health divisions. We also have the pharmaceuticals division for the prescription drugs. And the third division of our business is by crop science, which have crop protection and seeds for the farmers. And as you probably know from the press, we acquired the Monsanto company a couple of years ago, which also gave us a bit of headlines in the news. A couple of key figures about Bayer. So we are a very research-driven company, have a lot of spending there. We have around 100,000 employees worldwide and basically represented in the most countries around the globe. So that's basically a little bit about our context as a company. Before we start, we would like to let our project sponsor say a few words about the project and give you a virtual greeting here as a small home video. So here the video greeting from Andreas Bayer, please.
Hello, my name is Andreas Bayer. I'm the head of Record to Report for Bayer. Master data is one important unit of the Record to Report organization. Today, I can proudly say that we accomplished a lot and clearly are now mastering master data to become digital. This opens a wide variety of opportunities and enable business success. First of all, we improve quality at source and improve the data quality to gain better insight for the function, but also for the business. Respond quicker and leaner to business need, and therefore reduce our overall cost. Thirdly, but for me most importantly, We foster a worldwide ecosystem for master data and integrate internal as well as external data source, and with that open a new way of connecting the worldwide dots. I would like to thank the complete project team for the great effort and the great ideas, and wish the team all the best for their award. Now it's time to hand over to Jay and Jay, Jens and Jens, to present you our ideas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. That was the initial ideas or the initial welcome. So making master data digital, what is that? Before we start to go into that, we would share a few words about where we came from and which idea was driving us. So having a look where we are coming from, we started already in 2012 to make a fully centralized vendor master data process in our shared service center framework. Basically having one central enabler, we're using SAP MDG, standardizing our process and data standards and so on. So over the years, we have built a very, I would say, stable industrial process of our master data with around 10 to 12,000 requests coming in every month. And we have a 100% check in our shared services, checking the complete master data record, including the company code elements and purchasing data. So everything nicely documented in more than 100, 120 Word documents, basically detailing out on a country-specific level how the VAT number is going to look like in Estonia and so on. So that was basically our background. If we turn back the clock, we were basically coming into a situation where the master data team started to be torn apart. On the one hand, we were getting a high pressure to reduce our cost because we had a very nice process, but also a relatively costly one. And so on the other hand, we were also asked to improve data quality due to the increased analytics efforts we have. So basically, on the one hand, reduce cost, but do more for it, which we couldn't do using our conventional methods. So we needed to go new ways and find new opportunities. So the project idea was we basically became, as we started to look into our KPIs, where we saw that almost 80% of the MDG requests coming into our shared service center was approved directly from the master data expert without doing any additional enrichments or repairs or revisions or rejections. So the idea was if we could make a machine or the small birds trying to find the 80%, or at least just part of the 80%, which we didn't necessarily have to have analyzed by a human, but could have a machine approved. And we basically coined that the Cinderella principle, having these small birds helping us making that decision. So how did that look like? In order to do that, we started to look deeper into a cooperation which we've been part of actually since the beginning, which used to be called Corporate Data League, I think now Data Sharing Community, and looking into that services, because there were a lot of the components there, which was exactly what we needed in order to drive that process automation. So first of all, we had 1,700 or plus business rules, which are mostly on a country-specific level. We had stuff like address validation included. We have shared community data from the other members, connections to external trade and tax registers, as well as fraud prevention services, checking bank account data for fraud risk. So that all came into a parts of what we needed, but essentially we also found out it didn't cover the all, because as I mentioned, also the company code dependent segments are part of our scope, and the purchasing organization data is part of our scope. And we do have some buyer-specific policies and rules with embargo, with fraud, with compliance, which are not based off the community services, of course. But to boil the new proposed process down, we basically wanted to invent a service which we could get a reply from based on all these different elements. And if everything was green, the machine would automatically approve. If one or more of the rules were violated, we would go into the normal 4 eyes principles, which we had as part of our process today. So this is basically why we ended up calling the project CDL Plus, because in order to do that, we basically agreed with the CDL guys that we would get a buyer-specific private room where we could manage our own data and also manage our own business rules. So that was basically what was the starting point for the technical enablement and going on the endeavor for driving this automated decision-making as part of the process. So, but having a technical framework to do so is actually just part of the story, because one important lessons learned was that in order to drive this process automation, we need to rethink the way we are doing data governance and basically re-engineer our whole governance process around vendor master data. So today we have a more than 100 pages long desktop procedure, which are basically based on the industrial world. But now we found out just looking at the data quality wasn't actually enough. There was more to analyzing a request than just having a good data quality. So just to give an example, on the one hand, you would have requests like changing a telephone number of a small pizza shop done by an experienced user. That's very low risk, very low criticality. On the other hand, you would have changes of bank accounts with some of our largest suppliers done by a sporadic requester, only doing a couple of requests per year, where you would have a very high risk of failure, or you would have risk of fraud attempts and so on. So we need, and between those two extremes, you have all the different colors of the rainbow in between. So essentially, we need to revisit all our procedures and start to reflect about what is actually our risk appetite. Where are the real risks and where do we have acceptable risk? And in that process, we actually challenged every holy cow we had in our process. So I think the biggest holy cows were the bank data, which was definitely 100% check in the past. But today, if certain conditions are met, we only have a spot check, random chosen spot check on that. So essentially, the guidance we gave is some small fish are allowed to go through the net, but we need to be 100% sure that no big fish go through the net. So every big fish must be caught. And that was basically what has driven us through all our process meeting and afterwards hypercare meetings. So I just looked this morning. So in the Chinese calendar, we actually had the year of the white rat, but Bayer, we had the year of the big fish and the small fish, because that was how every meeting started. So, but just to give you an idea at how this looks in real life, I would like to hand over the word to Jens. Jens, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Give me just a second, I will share my screen. So originally, we have planned to show a live demo of MDG today. As we had some network connection issues yesterday, we decided to be on the safe side and show a video which we have prepared before. And what you see here is our MDG tool that we use for the creation and change of partner data in our SAP system landscape. And I will run the video now and explain you what I have done here. The plan is that I have an existing partner where I would like to create a new company code on the vendor segment. So I'm entering the vendor data in the MDG, going to the company codes, adding a new one, the 2000 for Bayer AG. It brings me the default values for the company code data. And in addition, I would like to add a payment method on the accounting view. So I enter a K, and going back to the main screen of the MDG request. And I have a functionality that I can check a request directly with a CDL check. And in that case, all the data is going to the CDL service, and he is checking the data quality rules against this request. And at the bottom, I'm getting the result, and I see directly that I have an error here, though I have picked the wrong payment method, and I need to correct this. For that reason, I'm going back to the vendor details and entering the right payment method on the company code I have added before. And instead of a K, I need to pick the M, which should be the right one. I'm going back to the main screen of the request. Checking again the result. And scrolling down, I see that the error is gone, though. Currently, we do have only info messages, and that's a perfect candidate for an auto approval. So when I submit the request, all the data segments which we use on the partner are going to the CDL service, and I'm getting the result back. There is always a 20% chance for a spot check decision, which we cannot influence which one is picked. But here in that case, when I check the data on the right side, I see that there is a completion. That means we have an auto approval, exactly what I would like to show today. So next, I would like to show you all the information that comes from the CDL service and which we log in our Audit Trail in the SAP system. And here in this slide, I have picked a request in our productive system, and you see the table view in the SAP for the different tables we use. The first one on the top is the CDL summary table. And here you see only the request, the decision of the request, if it's a full check or if it's an auto approval. And I picked, of course, a full check here because I would like to show all the different errors we have for this request. We have in the summary table, the number of the different categories and the different rules we have. And we have for the data quality rules and for the automation rules own table. The one in the middle is for the data quality rules. And I see here that I have a request with different types of data quality defects. And I get also the information about the context, what was wrong in the request. So the fields in the middle, the property content and parent here, these are exactly the payment methods and or payment terms in that case, excuse me, payment terms and purchasing organization, which are found by this rule. At the bottom, the third table is the automation rule table. Here we focus on what has changed in the request and if we need an auto approval if we need a full check for this request or not. And all this information we see here in the audit trail tables, brings us to a new level of transparency on our MDG requests. So in the past, we could only measure how many requests do we have and the duration of the request. But with this information in the table, we're seeing what has changed in the request. So we can answer questions like how many bank changes do we have in our MDG requests, or how many address changes. But as the information here is stored in different SAP tables, we started with the implementation of a Tableau dashboard to bring this information to the people in our organization. And that's exactly what I would like to show you next. So by changing the screen, I hope you can see my screen. This is a Tableau dashboard, which shows us the automation rate of our MDG requests in the last 6 weeks. So we're currently live with 2 shared service centers in Europe. It's Barcelona and Gdansk. We started with Barcelona in August, Gdansk in October. On the left side, you see the chart for Barcelona, on the right side for Gdansk. In the table above, you see the different weeks, and for each week, you have the number of requests for the different shared service center. And you can see also the different request categories. And we have here some more information than we have seen in the SAP table. So we do not have only auto approval and full check. We have the auto approval, of course, which is about 30% in the last weeks. And we have also a potential for data cleansing. In that case, we only have data quality defects in our MDG request, and we can work on this on these topics by cleansing our data and keeping our reference data up to date, so that we improve the data quality as well as the automation rate for our requests. We have a third category. This is a spot check decision. It's always about 20%. And at the end, we have the manual checks. In that case, we have an automation rule violation, and we want the request to be checked. Coming back to the potential for data cleansing, it's really important that we review our different rules in our different countries, and ensure that our reference data is up to date, and that we maybe need to do some adjustments on the different settings. And to do that, I have prepared another dashboard, which I would like to show you now. And here you see a tree map which shows us how many requests we have in the different countries in the period of the last 6 weeks. And the darker the color is, and the bigger the rectangle is, the more requests we have in the country. So Germany is the country with the most requests, and France, Italy, and so on. And when I use this mouse over functionality, I can directly see how many requests we have, and I get also the information about the auto approval rate. More important is that if I click on a country, another table shows up at the bottom, which shows me the rules, the data quality rules, which have triggered most for this country in the period. And I can directly see that I have an issue with the payment methods in Germany that we need to correct. And that really helps us to set our focus on the right things, and it helps us to for our data cleansing activities to set the right priorities. I can also show the details of the different rules by selecting one field here, and another table shows us the request details. That's exactly the same information we have seen before in the SE16. I get the request, the country, and also the context which causes the error here. Okay, so finally, I would like to show you how we manage our rules and our information in the CDL Wiki. So I'm switching again the screen. Here we are. And what I've opened here is exactly the rule we have seen before in Tableau. It's allowed values for payment method. And here on the top of the screen, I have a description about the rule, also the criticality and so on. And this is the information which is readable by us, so by humans. And when I scroll to the bottom, I'm seeing here a Sparkle query, which is exactly the code which is used in the CDL service. So if I do a change here within the night, it will get productive and will be used in the service. And yeah, the topic is that it's readable for machines and for humans as well. And as usually on a wiki, you have the opportunity to navigate to different kinds of information. For example, if I'm interested in the payment method and need some more context about the business background, I can select here the payment method for vendors, and a new page is opening where I can see a description about the rule. I have an example here with a screenshot. I have also the rules linked here where the payment method is used. And I have a link to the technical data model here on the bottom. And for example, I can also navigate further here and check the accounting information, because payment method is one of the accounting fields. And when I'm selecting the data segment accounting information, I'm getting all the different fields that are in the accounting view, and with a short description and an example here. And finally, I would like to show you another view which I really like in our wiki. This is the process view. This is more a hierarchy picture of the different data segments in SAP. So we have a business partner on the top, which could be a customer or a vendor. We have the different segments like the company code, purchasing data. And if I select here the accounting information, I can navigate exactly to the same page I've shown you before when I started coming from the rule. And that's what I would like to show you today in my demonstration. And with that, I'm handing back to Jens Peter again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jens. So before we wrap up, we just want to share with you one more thing, because the navigation or the automation here is one aspect of the CDL Plus framework, but we also wanted to elaborate a little bit about why this is becoming a key enabler in our data strategy. So essentially, the framework builds on a so-called knowledge graph. And in using this knowledge graph, we are capable of basically digitizing our knowledge. So putting a large bench of the 100 Word documents into a format which is readable both like a human and by the machine, basically sharing the same knowledge base. So this opens a lot of other perspective in our data management. So today we have focused a lot here on the process automation and the business rules, and also mentioned the usage of the external data. But as you also saw in Jens's demonstration, this opens the path of creating a quality dashboard. You got a small glimpse also here on how we can restructure our process management documentation of our data standards using the semantic wiki technology. So at the end of the day, by making our master data process digital, we are having one digital framework serving multiple purposes, and really depends on who you are and where you come from, which one you find is most important for you. So one analogy which I like to use is the one of a smartphone. So some people still think of a smartphone as a telephone, but many other people think of it as a navigation, a newspaper, as a TV, as a social network, or as a camera. And it's a little bit the same thing here. So where in the industrial world we had one tool serving one purpose, we now having one platform, one digital framework serving multiple purposes. And we basically started to reflect a little bit on that. And actually, the framework touches all the elements of the data excellence model. Of course, not into the full degree and so on, but in some respect, we have all elements of the thing covered. So as you've seen, we have here with the data quality reporting, we have a data catalog light in Wiki, document on our fields, our data standards. We have full integration with SAP MDG, and the framework is open also to integrate with other tools later. We have our data management procedures with our country specifics included, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of elements. Of course, if you are a professional photographer, you bring your big DSLR camera as a purpose, but for most people, the camera in the smartphone suffices. And that's basically the same for data catalog for us in this context. So for us, this is fit for purpose. If it's a central part of your strategy, you would probably choose a Colibra or something like that. So wrapping up, so if we look at the different dimensions, so from the innovation perspective, the automated decision making is based on a so-called semantic knowledge graph. We are directly integrating with data sharing capabilities, the uses of external data, and the share economy services coming out of the corporate data league or the CDQ data sharing community. All the services are fair, so you can basically interface it from and with other platforms and tools. And we use this to essentially digitize our knowledge and make it available both for humans and for reporting, for the machines, for the business rules engine, and for Tableau and so on. So the business value, as I mentioned in the beginning, we were confronted with a heavy pressure for cost savings, and using this process automation, we are basically in an area where we get tangible cost savings, which can be measured in full FTE, so full-time equivalents. Moreover, say from the end user perspective, it's of course nice when almost a third of your requests are being approved immediately within seconds instead of waiting for the typical up to 2 days SLA in our shared service center environment. Then secondly, we have the fully new transparency in data quality, and enables us also to set the right priorities of our cleansings. So we are now able to measure what was previously in the black box. That's of course a very nice thing, but also having a digital process, it opens a wealth of new monitoring service mechanisms on external data. So maybe just to give you a small example, we have a new monitoring service monitoring the medical licenses of doctors in Switzerland based on a government database. And we actually figured out, hey, most of the component we already have. So to stay in the analogy, we just needed an additional app on our smartphone in order to go that extra step to do that automatic monitoring if the licenses are still valid. Last but not least, we are basically enabling our data governance, and this framework is not limited just to vendor master data, so you can, in principle, apply to any data object in an economically viable way. So if we should try to coin a vision for the future, I know CDQ is talking about data quality as a service, but how about having a data governance as a service offering to the business, where we can basically get a full-fledged framework where business can give in their critical data objects and get the main basis of data excellence touched. So that was a little bit a look in the crystal ball. So to wrap up, next steps and future dreams. So very concrete, our main focus here for the next coming month is to cover the rest of the world. So as Jens mentioned, we already have Europe covered, but we want to move fast into the 4 remaining regional shared service center in Q1, maybe going into April, but get that covered early next year. Customer master data is in principle technically enabled, but the governance re-engineering will be the next step, so that definitely needs to be made. Looking a bit further ahead, you could imagine any other master data object like material, chart of account, profit centers, etc. Also utilizing a similar framework. And taking the big dream hat on for a second, you could also imagine any data-driven process also in the transactional process. So PO analysis and so on, where you sometimes also have a risk-based approach. So a couple of final thoughts. We did have a little bit of a moonshot process project in our sense. We made some business case commitments in terms of FTE savings. So we basically went all in our promises, no stopping halfway possible. Otherwise, it would probably have been nice and relaxing to stop with a nice data quality dashboard, but we needed to go the extra mile. And otherwise, I think, and at the end, that turned out to be good. And then maybe a final remark based on our data management journey. So in the industrial framework I described in the beginning, we started to come close to our boundaries for optimization. So there was not much more you could do. We already had MDG, we already had our mass update processes and so on. But right now, starting with the digital era, we are sort of in the early beginning of understanding the new possibilities. So new ideas popping up all the time, and we basically more need to restrain ourselves a little bit to make sure that we keep the focus on getting the rest of the world covered before we start to dream too much more. So to wrap it up and finalize, the goal going forward is to find a handsome prince for Cinderella. And, I would like to use that as a closing remark and hear if there are any final questions here to J&J. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the approach on the one hand, or the explanation of your business rationale, but also the concrete examples on how this materializes in the different tools that you have been showing. There are quite a number of questions, and I try, we have roughly 6 minutes. I try to summarize them. So there are questions from Olaf Kexel, but also from Sascha Brenner that go into the same direction. So did you use your machine head only for data validation, or also for data enrichment and change, or even beyond to create value proposals or even automatic insertion or correction?
In the first step here, we have been very focused on this automatic decision part, which is basically a very binary thing. So it's either yes or no. But essentially the beauty of having it and as a digital platform is that the enrichment steps you are mentioning starts to get much easier than they were in the past. So the enrichment we have are actually based on, I would call them old school industrial ways, But if we've had, say, such a framework here, then it would have been much easier, and I think it would be the way to go once we have our next system change going to S/4HANA, when we'll start hopefully with a greenfield approach.
Okay, then I have a question. I'm not sure whether I completely get it. Have you witnessed, so it's from Patrick van Pette, have you witnessed the bad actors responding to the fishnet strategy and changing their strategy as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, knock on wood. I mean, we didn't have any big fish yet, and that's basically the good news. And I would say the other good news is that we've had a lot of learnings on the way. So it has the whole project phase and also during hypercare efficiency, the hypercare phase has been a lot about learning, a lot about discussions. And we did have quite a few adjustments to our rule sets. So it's a real calibration process to say, okay, is this a big risk? Is this a small risk? Do we accept it? Do we do anything about it? So this risk calibration is actually a very interesting part of the process. I would say the tool itself or the framework itself can give you any automation rate between 0 and 100%. So it's all about reflecting your current risk appetite. But yeah, knock on wood, no big fish yet.
Okay. Then there are questions about how you handle, so also from different persons like Björn Casimir. You have both biospecific rules, and the generic ones from CDQ. And how do you actually maintain that? And I think in the second question, which was in a similar way, how do you do that on the level of an organization like Bayer that has a lot of, let's say, complexity and obviously scope? So how do you, it's basically from Mark Lorber, how difficult was it to get reliable business rules for the organization-specific data given the size of Bayer? How did you get the commitment of the stakeholders, accounting, sales, procurement?
Let's start with the integration of the CDQ rules. We basically open up for all CDQ rules per default, but the framework enables us to change the criticality from, for example, an error to an info. And that's basically what we use. So we monitor the process, part of the learning experience, and sometimes we also realize, hey, we have a whole country with a automation rate of 0, because of one of the CDQ rules doesn't match to our data set. And then we go into and adjust and calibrate, and then it runs on. Sometimes CDQ also, I mean, recently had changes for France, which just let our automation rate drop. And then we need to see, okay, do we need to go in and do a cleansing? Because the good rule is good, or do we take that CDQ rule out? That's the one thing. The other question was about the acceptance in the organization and the how to get the rules and the change management was basically made somewhat easier because we've done the part of the industrialization upfront, which dramatically reduced our number of stakeholders. So a lot of standardization has already been done, and we have a very good network in our shared service center also about country experts, which can then help us validate the rules for individual countries in individual regions. And that's basically what we utilize. So with that shared service center network, we basically had a very good basis also to do communication towards the procurement organization, because they're already in contact. So that actually turned out to work very well.
Okay, thank you. There are also a lot of, let's say, congratulations. I let you read afterwards.
Okay.
Also, well, congratulating on the approach. In general, this was, by the way, also a feedback from the jury. Obviously, the jury also mentioned here we had a really very concrete business case, and I think that you did not express the numbers as explicitly as in the written document, but you made it very clear that you somehow had a hard bet on the FTE reduction that you would actually achieve through that. So you did also take a certain business risk in the whole story. Yeah, so yeah. I think that one last question, which was a little bit like, okay, why don't you, I'm trying to find it again, why didn't you use CDL as a single version of the truth rather than validation of data entered in MDG? That's from Ian McGuinness.
I mean, we still have a lot of data records which would not be covered by CDL. So I think CDL is a very valuable source of information, and certainly a very extremely valuable source of connecting with other data sources and with community data. But we do have vendors and suppliers which you will not find in CDQ or by other registers like DUNS and so on. So we still have to have all that flexibility. So MDG also in our 2B setup, I would see as a given part of it. I would more see it on the inbound side, that we in the new setup will help more to use the CDL framework to pre-fill certain segments, rule-based, which we didn't touch yet, but which we can touch once we set up the MDG from the greenfield.
Okay, so thank you very much. Time is over, I would say.
Yeah.
You have been challenged by a number of questions here, and we would like to obviously thank you for the great presentation, and also for the responses to the different questions that have been raised. And I guess we see you later. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.